everyone, and welcome to enVision Together, going to our next level of best. And today I have a wonderful guest here, and his name is Robert Hunt, and he's going to tell us lots of wonderful things to add to that great smile of his. He's going to introduce himself in his own way, as do all of our guests on our show. So, Robert, won't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you? And welcome, welcome, welcome. And we'd like to know stuff from uh, who are you? What was your childhood like? And walk us all the way up to the present.
It's funny as dudes, we like to jump right to what do I do for a living? And if you meet someone, you go, "Hey, how you doing? What do you do?" And they tell you about their job. I have a great life, and I would describe it as very challenging, but it really comes down to how you want to look at it.
Mhm,
And really by comparison to other countries and the things that people go through, I've got it made living in America. I
mhm,
grew up in a very poor family. I had a really angry father who beat my mom and beat us as kids, and we were very frightened of him. But I learned how to work around him, not to
mhm,
make him angry or to avoid him. And which is kind of how I grew up to feel about God, that if I just didn't piss off God, that maybe things would be okay. So I
mhm,
would do the very least I had to do to please God as far as I thought it was. And so my view of the world was just based on that version of my childhood. When I grew up and got married, I really didn't know how to be a good man or a good husband. I had to learn the hard way. And I knew what not to do. I just didn't know what to do. And so through
mhm,
all that stuff, I learned to trust in the Lord. I learn to be a good listener. I learned to give grace, and I learned
mhm,
to never give up.
mhm.
Today, I'm 61 years old. I live in the Dallas, Texas area with my beautiful wife, Kathy. We've been married 26 years. We got two adult children. One lives in Austin, and one is here finishing up college with us here in the DFW area.
Wow. Thanks for being so candid.
Well,
I
it's the past, right? What am I going to hold on to? I got my hands are full trying to keep a hold of the future, let alone taking the time to carry the past with me. There's no room for that.
Right. But I do think that it sets a wonderful foundation to kind of know who you are, and even I guess the well from which you draw from, because I think all of our past experiences help us become who we are today,
They
um,
do.
giving shape to who we are today.
Yeah.
So I know that you believe that individuals must decide on what they want their lives to look like, um, and then make a change. So tell
Well,
us
I
more
think that's
about
the foundation of all good decisions is based on where you're going or what you want. You know, we're not robots, we're not in a machine. So we get to decide what we want and then we get to go chase it. And I think over time it feels like our country has lost the idea that you can actually pursue the life you want. I'm not talking that everyone gets to be rich or famous and be on TV. I am talking about that you can enjoy the life that you have or change it. And I think that we've got to a place where we aren't enjoying our lives, but we're not willing to do anything about it. And I learned that through my own life of my own journey. I learned that I lead CEO peer groups for a living. That's what my day
Mm,
job is. I bring together business owners every month and we talk about our challenges of running our business and reaching our goals and the emotions that we carry. And I've watched the ones who truly own it get the results they want. And the ones who don't know how to really be accountable for their life and their business, they're the ones who flounder and suffer and they complain and they feel defeated most of the time. So
mhm,
as I watch those two buckets of people and I watched my own life, I really decided I want to be able to teach people what it's like to chase the life you really want and
mhm,
to not make excuses, blame, say you can't, or wait and hope, which is the way we roll as victims when we're not being accountable for things.
mhm. So you would say the most common thing that gets in the way of change is people just not being willing to be accountable or take the
Yeah.
first step.
If for the when you look at the things that you aren't doing, it's really you. And so you could
Mm,
blame the government, your boss, your parents, you could blame God, you could blame anyone you want to. You can make excuses for why you don't have this or that. You could say you can't do anything about it and stay in a victim role, but it doesn't change anything.
mhm,
It's when you take the opportunity to own the situation is when you gain the power to do something about it. And so I always ask people, are you living the life you want? And if not, why?
mhm,
And when you look at those excuses or those things you would attribute to the reason you're not living the life you want, you will see that many times we put ourselves in a victim role when
Mhm.
we could own it
Mhm.
and make a plan to go do something about it and be victorious.
Okay. So if I'm sitting in one of your sessions and I'm just totally hopeless, how do you help me hope again?
Hope, hope is the coolest thing ever. When you've
Mm.
lost everything, you still have hope. And I think that's the greatest treasure. And so, if you feel hopeless, you have to step back and look at the things, the situations objectively. Sometimes we're our worst enemy when it comes to our emotions. We see things in a light of defeat and beatdown, but other people don't see that. So, the best way to move to a place from hopelessness to hope is to invite people into your journey. People who you can trust, people who are caring and honest, and
Mhm.
people who have owned their own journey, who don't play the victim role, and then tell them, this is where I'm at. This is why I feel hopeless. And let them speak truth into your life. My beautiful wife, Kathy, and I, we got to a place in our lives where we owed $90,000 in debt. And that did not
Mm.
include the house or the cars.
Mm.
And it was in 2019 that we started that year going, how much longer are we going to wait that somehow things would get better? Every year we get more and more into debt. It's not going to be better. It felt truly hopeless.
Mhm.
We had to step back and look at our situation and take stock of where we were at, what we were doing, the opportunities ahead of us. And it was in that year that we decided to stop blaming or making excuses or waiting in hope and or saying we can't do anything about it. We decided to own it. And we really got to that place because we said to ourselves, wait, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're broke, unhappy in your marriage,
Mhm.
mad at God, frustrated with your business, health is suffering, you're drowning your sorrows in booze. Nobody cares until you do. And that's why we called the book Nobody Cares,
Mm.
because we want you to get to that place in your life where you realize, look, nobody cares. We got our own junk. Until you're willing to own your junk, there's no one who's going to help you. But when you own your junk, the
Right.
world is full of people who will support you.
Yes. I often tell people, especially young people, when you are going for your dreams and whatever it is you want to accomplish, going to college, whatever it is you're doing, I said, if you don't give up on yourself and you look for help, help will always be around you.
Yeah.
And always look for it and don't be ashamed to ask for help.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
because a
And one of the
lot of
ways you can ask for help better is just not ask for, don't say I need your help, say I want your help. When you
mm-hmm,
change the word need to want, you
mm-hmm,
feel better about it. You don't feel so weak. People don't ask for
mm,
help because it makes you feel look weak, right? So
that's
don't say I need, say I want. You're so smart and you're so good at this. I want to let you help me.
mm,
So that you feel good because I'm inviting you in and I'm
mm-hmm,
recognizing how awesome you are and I get the help I need. So change the word need to want and you're more
mm-hmm.
likely to let people help you.
Hmm, that's good. I do like that. It's a more positive way to look at it. Huh, that's good. And so I know that you believe that people should be accountable. So accountable, I guess, to themselves, but do you also feel that they need to be accountable to those outside of themselves? And if you're saying that, how do you find someone to be accountable to?
Yeah, the real definition of that is no one can make you be accountable, but you can make yourself be accountable if you want to. And you can invite people in to walk in that journey with you. Peer pressure goes a long way.
Mhm.
If your buddy's working out, you work out. If your friends
Mhm.
are saving money, you feel better about saving money. It's just peer pressure has been around since we were kids. It's really helpful. And so when you make a decision, this is how I'm going to live my life. This is how I want to work on my marriage. I want to dive back into my faith again. I want to change the way I look at my career. Then you invite someone in and you tell them what you're going to do. That's why our book, at the beginning of the book, at the end of chapter 1, there's a satisfaction assessment. And we want you to declare, where are you satisfied in your life or not? And then you can take that assessment, you can show someone, go, look, this is where I'm at. This is my journey. This is where I am today. They don't fix it for you and they don't tell you what to do, but they walk with you, they encourage you, they pray for you, they ask questions. How's that going? What were your results? And peer pressure will help you keep going. But I think you got to find someone who really will encourage you in the journey that you want to take. A lot of times, people that we know don't want you to get better because it makes them look worse. And so if you say, "Hey, I'm going to lose weight," then they're like, "Oh, good luck. I'm not doing that." And as you start talking healthy and exercising and losing weight, they feel bad. So
Hmm.
they want to have you, yeah, don't be so serious about it all the time. Here, have this cheeseburger. Come on, let's go out for
The
a beer.
crab mentality.
Yeah, because it makes me feel better that I'm
Hmm.
not losing weight and you're
Hmm.
making me feel bad, as we say a lot of times. You're
Hmm.
making me feel bad because you're losing weight. Well, I feel bad, not you're not making me do that.
Right.
And so I think we've got to make sure that when we do create a place where we're going to be sharing the journey so we can share the accountability that we're choosing for our lives, got to find people who will support you in the
Hmm.
direction you're going and not hold you back.
Hmm. I thought you were going to say find someone who is successful in that area where you want to improve and then get them, but you made me think of it differently. Accountability doesn't really require that someone is successful in that area, just someone who's willing to walk with you around the things you want to accomplish. I guess
Yeah.
I'm thinking more mentor.
Well, it doesn't hurt to learn things, but it may not apply to you. When you go look at
Hmm.
someone else's story, there's tons of stories of people's successes and what they did, but it may not work for you. It may not be your style, may not be
Hmm.
your journey. You have to come up with your own plan. In the book we talk about, in the first four chapters, are the traps that hold us back as victims. And when you get to
Hmm.
that place where you say, look, nobody cares until you do, then you
Hmm.
have the second part of the book that walks you through how you succeed in moving out of a victim mindset. And the
Hmm.
first step is to acknowledge reality, to take stock of where you're at.
Hmm.
Accountability is to account for what's going on and to make a plan for it proactively. Sometimes we confuse the word responsibility with accountability, but
Hmm.
responsibility is doing something. Accountability is doing the thing that
Hmm.
needs to be done. And so
Hmm.
when you look at your life and you say, okay, this is where I'm at, well, I've got all these resources. That's like Kathy and I, when we owed $90,000 in debt, we looked at our home. We said, well, we've got this beautiful house. It's huge. It's got all this great stuff. We can't afford it. We could sell it. Now that sucked. The idea of selling our house was a very, very big decision.
Hmm.
So the next chapter goes take stock and acknowledge reality, then embrace the suck. And that's what it was for us.
Hmm.
It sucked to sell our house. We didn't like that at all, but it was an option and it was the best option because to get out of debt of $90,000 would take us years.
Yeah.
And in September of that year, I got vertigo for 16 days. I never had
Oh.
vertigo before, but all of a
Mm.
sudden I
The
couldn't work. I
stress.
couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. And I
Mm.
thought, geez, what if I'm going to have vertigo the rest of my life? I can't wait one day longer to fix this problem. And I
Hmm.
think it was God just shaking me up, going, hey, how much longer are you going to kick this down the road? And it was a wake up call. So we sold our house and we paid off all our debt and we started over. And it
Wow.
was at that point that we gained clarity and peace and confidence and hope and
Hmm.
joy because the debt wasn't choking us down every day. And we looked at our marriage and thought, well, we're really not happy with our marriage. Why don't we go to counseling? I'm not happy
Hmm.
with my weight. Why don't I stop drinking so much booze and eating snacks every night? Why don't I go to the gym and change my routine?
Hmm.
And we looked at everything as, hey, what do I want it to be? Where is it now? What am I
Hmm.
going to do about it?
Hmm.
And it was very empowering to
Hmm.
just look at everything as we can own this.
Hmm. I really I like how you share the way in which you share the examples. You were making me reflect when we first started, not when we first started, but a little while ago when we were talking about accountability. And I kind of broke that word apart in my head and I said, give account of my ability. And to me, that's still positive because if instead of being hopeless, take the time to map out, give
That's right.
account,
That's right.
put a plan in place around your abilities and stop discrediting the abilities you have
Yeah.
as nothing, which is getting lost in something like hopelessness. Because we all have something, is flipping that switch in our mind to embrace. I think sometimes we don't embrace even the things that we're good at.
Mm. Well, we've been beaten down so long and we've lived as victims for so long. And no one thinks of themselves as a victim, but you are. You're
Hmm.
playing a victim by the way you live your life.
Hmm.
Look, most of the people in the world will retire or get to a place where they can no longer work and they won't have enough money to get by. It's a
Hmm.
fact. The IRS came out with a statistic that said out of 100 people, one person retires rich, three people retire well off, 30 something people retire okay, but 56 people will absolutely need someone else to survive the rest of their life.
Wow.
That's messed up. How many years do you have to plan for retirement? 50?
Hmm.
45? I mean, you
Hmm.
got a long time, but you don't own it. You
Hmm.
say, well, next year, oh, I can't do anything about that. Or well, I have to have cable. I have to have this kind of car. Well, what about your future? Well, it'll work out. That kicking it down the line is going to put you where you're going to be screwed, and it's
Right.
all on you. And you're going to have to own it. Now, you can be mad at the government, you can be mad at your boss, you can be blaming the economy, but at the end of the day, you had 50 years to plan for your retirement, and
Hmm.
you're still not ready. And so
Hmm.
it's just emblematic of the fact that we respond as in responsibility instead of account as in accountability. And we need to be people who are proactive, who are chasing the life that we really want,
Hmm.
proactively doing the things and living the way that we really want to live.
Yeah, and over time, projecting over time, not just in the moment.
Yeah, we live by the moment, don't we? We're impatient, we're short-minded. Everything we do is temporal, and we're lazy as a society. We're very lazy. You
And
know
we're
you're
not
supposed to
into
floss.
delayed gratification.
We are not. Instant. I mean, if I got to wait for Amazon to deliver my goods for one whole day,
Right.
it's driving me nuts.
Right. And you know what? I do agree that we live in the greatest country in the world, but I do believe that by living in America, we do have this, I think we have less patience, we have less, we're like, so many things are at our fingertips.
Yeah.
We, I do think our degree of struggle is not like struggle in other countries. So
No.
we, I don't know, we're almost like cream puffs or something.
We have become lazy, we become entitled, and then just because of that, we become whiners. And what I think is worse is the way that the Christians are living their lives. If you're a Christ follower, you're supposed to be thankful, you're supposed to be grateful. You've been given forgiveness of his sins, your eternal life, the Spirit of God lives inside of you. You have the Bible to guide you and a whole network of people who could surround you and support you, and every book and video you could ever imagine. And all we do is complain about the sound level at the church or the temperature or how the seats are or who shows up or what they all this
I didn't
stuff
get a
we're
close
just
parking space.
yeah we've just all become a group of whiners, and I know God did not come and deliver us and redeem us to be complainers. And he specifically says you will be accountable for the life you live.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
we are going to stand before God someday, and he's going to go, I let you live in America. I let you have all your limbs that work successfully. You did not have a problem, and you did not have extreme poverty. You had a place to live, a bed to sleep in, and food to eat every day. What did you do with that?
Yep. And that's just like those 5 or 10 talents.
Yeah.
Did you multiply them? Did you
Or
then
do
be able to
bury
use
him.
it to help others, or did you bury it because you were afraid with
Right.
hopelessness or whatever the case may be?
Right.
I like the title of your book because it really gets your attention. Nobody cares.
Yeah,
And it has a sting to it, but I
it
think
does.
we're aligned. I think more of us need to get stung.
Yeah. We
And
wanted to
we
get
need to
people's
wrestle
attention.
with the truth.
Yeah. We were going to call it something else, but it just didn't have the same attention getting function. But it really is the turning point. Kathy and I went through this ourselves when we really thought nobody cares if we're miserable. No one's ever going to know if our marriage is suffering. No one knows
Mhm.
how much debt we have. No one knows the problems and the stress that we carry. But at the end of the day, it was all eating us up. And so when you say to yourself, nobody cares until I do, then you decide, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And I love that
Mhm.
moment because that's when you
Mhm.
gain power to change anything.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about the book and some of the things that it offers in terms of um, we talked about how the title has a little bit of a sting, but how do you gently walk people? Because the sting is nice, but at the end of the day, you want people to really hear you
Yeah.
so that they can make a real change. Uh, what are some of the things you offer there that gets people moving in the right direction?
Well, we are very vulnerable in this book. We both Salem and I, who's the co-author, Salem Thine, we both tell some really vulnerable stories about
Mm-hmm.
our lives. Salem tried to kill himself at one point, and he writes about
Mm-hmm.
that. My
Mm-hmm.
beautiful wife, Kathy, and I acknowledging that we owed $90,000 in debt is very humbling. It's embarrassing. You look like a failure. And we wanted to encourage other people to press past the things that hold them back. And so we thought if we just are honest about our own struggles and connect it to the journey that we went on and the facts that we've learned about accountability, maybe it will inspire someone else. There are people out there who have really, really tough situations. I don't agree, I don't disagree with that. I don't ignore that. However, at the end of the day, you can be screwed and have a miserable life, or you can be screwed and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've in my journey, like growing up with a dad who beat us and we were pretty poor and we had struggles. I could grow up to be bitter and angry and beat my wife and kids, but that's not the choice I made. You have to make a choice on how you're going to live your life. And if you want to stay a victim, there's plenty of people who will support you.
Mm-hmm.
But we write in this book a map of how to recognize where you're being a victim,
Mm-hmm.
getting to that point of saying, no, not anymore. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
cares. And then a workbook to help you work out a plan to get rid of that, to
Mm-hmm.
change it. So if you have an area in your life that you are playing a victim and you read this book, you will come up with a plan to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It is made that way. It gives you the tools and the techniques and the ideas to come up with a plan to own it and to fix it.
Okay. So it's a tough love, but it's love.
Yeah.
Um, so how would you say that this book aligns with your faith?
Hmm. Yeah, I think again back to what where much is given, much is required. It's this idea that you are going to be accountable, and I don't think the world understands the freedom and power of accountability. And so, because I like to tell people about my faith in Christ because I want them to know Jesus and the freedom and the joy that comes from that. In the same way, I want to tell them about accountability and the freedom and the joy that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I live out my faith. I don't run around telling people they're going to hell because they don't do what I do, but I
Mm-hmm.
do live out my life in a bold way so that God is honored through that. And I hope that people will see that and go, tell me more about this Jesus guy, and
Mm-hmm.
that God will choose them. But I never save anybody. That's up to God. But I
Right.
can be an influence to encourage people to take it seriously and to look at it and to give God a second chance. And so I teach the principles of accountability in the same way I teach about my faith in Christ. I want people to experience it. I want them to own it. I want them to have the benefit of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you believe God teaches accountability?
Yeah. Well, he specifically says you're going to be held accountable. And if you look in the Bible, all these guys who thought they got away with stuff, but they didn't, um, was his Ananias and his wife who
Mm-hmm.
sold their house and then came to the disciples and go, look, here's
And
all of our
lied.
promises. He says, is that everything? And he's like, yeah, boom, he's dead. And I always thought that was such a horrible story. Like, why would God do that? Because God doesn't need our money. And
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't need us to do anything except love and obey him. But
Mm-hmm.
when we give him with pride and we look to look good and we think we're fooling God or anybody else, we're not. These things catch up with it. Jonah tried to run away and a fish ends up swallowing him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everything we do that we think we're just going to work our way around God, he's God.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put him in a box. You can't escape the hand of God.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you for that. Um, so as you're sharing this message, I'm imagining that at certain points you encounter people who have really taken hold and made a change. What's one of the biggest or most inspiring examples that you can think of?
You know, I really literally get messages every week from people who've read the book and tell me their stories. And I met a guy last week who told me that he read it and he and his wife went and read it together, and they had the same kind of financial problems that we did. Sadly, it was a much higher number.
Mm-hmm.
But they did the same thing. They made some drastic changes in their lives, and they started a program, and they sold some things, and they made some changes in how they lived. And he just wanted to thank me for writing a book that shared that story. We hear stuff all the time. It's usually just about the head trash that we have that holds
Mm-hmm.
us back. We're our worst enemy when it comes to making decisions like this. And so I love hearing those stories, but I feel like uh, people are reading the book and being inspired, but they're not acting on it all the way, which is why I'm focused now on doing workshops because I want to get people in a room and show them physically how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Step one, step two, step three. It works.
Mhm.
And we had two workshops this year already, and it was
Oh,
huge. It was fantastic.
oh,
And
good.
people right there in the room were declaring with real vulnerability to people they never met before, this is my satisfaction assessment. This is what I want to work on. This is my problem. And they were vulnerable and honest, and they got solutions, and they walked out the door with hope again. And so
Mhm.
I want to do more of those workshops anywhere in the world where someone will let me come and do a workshop. I believe that this is very powerful and it can change a lot of lives.
Mhm. That's great. Um, I um I was thinking while I was listening to you about again the vulnerability piece of it. Um, even when you say that you sold your house, taking steps like that. And then you mentioned earlier that you had vertigo when you were going through all the stress before making the change. And I was reflecting on my own life. I've had windows where, man, you can't put a price on peace.
Mm,
You can't put a price
yeah,
on um, a healthy relationship. You would
yeah.
gladly give up your house just to have peace.
Yeah.
So,
But people don't feel empowered to do that. They've been defeated. They've
mhm,
given up. And
mhm,
that's the hard part is I can't get to enough people to get the first conversation going to get them to realize you're not done.
mhm.
You might be in a tough spot, but you're not done. There
Right.
is hope. And
Yeah.
in the worst possible situation you can be in, there is always hope. And I think that's the thing we need to encourage people is to just don't give up.
Yeah.
Find what is holding you back, own it and do something about it.
Mhm,
And there is power in that.
mhm,
There's hope and there's freedom. And you're right, the peace is the biggest part. I remember after we paid off all of our debt, we are living in this house that we live in now. It's a rental that we found not too far from our old house. And we didn't have any furniture. We sold all of our furniture because it wouldn't fit into this house. And
mhm,
we took our beds, a couple dressers, some folding chairs and tables, and then our
mhm,
dishes, some of them, because it couldn't even those wouldn't all fit in the kitchen.
mhm,
So but I remember sitting on the folding chair, spending some time with the Lord in April of 2020 when we had sold the house and the world was shut down with COVID. And I remember sitting there one morning having this weird feeling I hadn't had in the longest time. It was
mhm,
peace. And I forgot what peace felt like because I had
mhm,
bit by bit given up peace for stress and worry and fear and anxiety and hopelessness. And that morning, as I sat there, I thought, this is peace. I remember this.
mhm.
And I don't want to ever lose that again
Right.
because their life is full of challenges and hardships, but I want to continue to enjoy the peace that accountability will provide me.
Mhm. And you're really talking about pushing a reset button, giving yourself a fresh start. It doesn't mean that you won't own a house again, but you can build that future in a more sensible way, more reasonable way that takes the stress out and even just reassess what's most important to you. Is
Yeah.
it how big the house is, or is it the longevity of making sure that retirement is comfortable as well and all those things. So,
Yeah, I think that's the accountability side again. I look at this and I go, all right, I'm out of debt. I'm making great money. The business took off. It grew. We're doing great. Why don't I
mhm,
go buy a house again?
mhm,
Because I have no retirement.
mhm.
I've got another, I don't know, maybe I could work 10 years until I start forgetting people's names and meetings. I don't know how long I got.
You're funny.
But let's figure I got 10 years ahead of me. What am I going to do in the next 10 years to build up enough of a retirement that I'm not asking my kids to take care of me? So buying a house won't do that because not only I put all that money in a house until I sell it, have no money. I have to fix it up. I have to decorate it. I have to maintain it and pay property taxes. So by renting, I could put my money in investments and do the best I can to grow that as much as I can over the next 10 years because I'm accountable. I've taken account of where I'm at and I've looked at my abilities and I'm moving forward of what I can do instead of being responsible, which means
Mhm.
when I'm 70 years old and they no longer can work, I'll fill out the social security paper and get my little chunk of money that comes from the government and I'll somehow be responsible for it. That is not the same as proactively creating a future that I really want.
Right, right. Okay, this is good stuff. Um, so I always ask the same question with every interview, with every guest. Let's just imagine, we've shared a lot of good stuff, so hopefully this is not the case, but let's imagine the audience forgets everything we just talked about. What's the one thing, whether you've said it already or not, that you would really say, but please don't forget this one thing?
I think the one thing was don't be lazy.
Mm,
We don't think of ourselves as lazy, but if you look at your life, there's a million things you're supposed to do that you don't do. Put the
mhm,
cap on the toothpaste, close the door, hang up the coat, floss your teeth, plan for your retirement.
mhm,
The things that we do that we're just lazy with. But one of them is we don't own the journey that God's given us to. We do something towards it because we're responsible, but
mhm,
we're not creating the outcome we want intentionally. And then all we do is become victims and complain. So really, don't be lazy. If you know your marriage should look like this and it's not, do something about it.
mhm,
If you know that your relationship with your kids or your faith or your finances, your health is not what you want to be, don't be lazy.
mhm,
Do something about it.
mhm.
And you can, when you own it, you have the power to change it. And so really be encouraged that you have all the opportunities in the world, but you can't be lazy and achieve that.
Right. I agree with you. And yeah, we don't like that word lazy. But we do have to do something. We have to do our part. While I was listening to you just now, I was reflecting on how many people, and I've gone through windows like this too, where as a person of faith, I'll pray for something, but then I'm not doing the work. And the Bible says faith without works is dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to do the work. Uh, I don't know
Well,
if I want
we even pray lazy. We pray
to.
like once and we're like, okay, where is it?
Yeah,
you know and he says pray without ceasing. And he tells
right.
the story about the judge who the woman came and asked for something and was relentless, or the
Mm-hmm.
neighbor who he asked for bread in the middle of the night. And he says
Mm-hmm.
he won't get up and give you bread because he cares about you. He'll get him bread because you're bugging him. And so we pray like, okay, Lord, help me out, this is a really big deal, and then we don't ask about it for a year. Oh,
Yeah,
God didn't answer their prayer. Man, if you really really want something, pray every day, all day
exactly.
long, multiple times a day, every single day. Oh, that's too much work. Well, then you don't want it.
Exactly. But a lot of people don't connect that. I always say if you don't work on it, toward it, you don't really want it bad enough.
Yeah.
But I was laughing mildly as you just shared because the saying lazy praying it just stayed in my head. And oh my goodness, that
Yeah.
I think that is going to stick with me. That's going to be a gem that sticks with me. Lazy praying.
Well, I'm guilty of it. I say I worry about my children growing up to be godly kids, but I don't pray over them every morning. I don't pray multiple times a day for my children. I don't look at something and say, "Oh God, that reminds me of Lauren. Would you keep her close to you?" I don't bathe them in prayer. So how big a deal is it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And the Bible says a sluggard craves for much and accomplishes nothing.
mm-hmm,
Lazy people want a lot but get nothing.
mm-hmm.
And so don't be lazy. God wasn't lazy. He worked really hard for 6 days and then he took a Sabbath day of rest. But look what he got done in 6 days.
Right.
Very productive, God.
What I like about this conversation is because I think we're talking about accountability in ways that will even make people apply it to their faith because we've used the examples of the talents, we've used the examples of the lady who kept knocking, and so and or asking, and then the visitor that kept knocking till finally the owner got up and gave him his
Yeah.
request.
Yeah.
Um, that I don't know. I think that will strike a chord in people, relating it that way. But also just going back to the fact that faith without works is dead. We can't be lazy. We have to use our faith
Yeah.
and the abilities, the talents that he's given us together for an outcome. I always say too, I do believe there's a part that God does, but I believe there's a part obviously that we do and we have to do our part. And I think he does the part that's kind of beyond us, where maybe it is somehow my request, my prayer is a little bit beyond what I can pull off by myself. And I believe God honors our faith, our movement, our works, and then aligns things to help things come to pass.
Yeah, I always equate it to that vision of a farmer planting corn. And when he plants the corn, he puts the seed in the soil. And as it starts to grow, he doesn't stand over the corn and scream at it, grow, grow faster, let's go. He goes and he does other things. And in God's timing, in God's grace, he'll get X number of corn husks on that stalk. But God
Yeah.
decides how many corns grow. He doesn't.
Yes.
The farmer put one in there. His job was to water it, to sow it, to water it, to keep the weeds out, to keep the birds out, and let it grow. But God made it grow.
I
You
love
have
that
an active
analogy.
part in doing your part so God can make the things that he wants to get done, but you got to own it. You got to
Hmm.
show up and start the game so God can be glorified. God is glorified through Kathy and I selling our houses, getting out of debt, stopping to blame God and be angry about him not
Hmm.
doing what we want to do. He's honored in the way we approached him and gave him the honor he deserves, and he blessed us in response to that.
Hmm. I like that example, and it reminds me, oftentimes I say, to help people understand faith, that when you plant a seed, it's a long time before, because the roots are growing and forming. It's a long time before you see that twig or whatever break through the soil, and you could see. You have to hold on and still have faith when you can't see the results yet. But
Right.
I think moving forward, I'm going to add on the part that you just shared too.
Oh, good. Take it.
Yeah. So thanks so much for this talk today.
Thank
What
you.
I always do at the end is give my guests an opportunity to share with the audience anything they want to share about how to stay engaged with you, get your book, your coaching, your speaking. So anything you want to share along those lines, go
Well, that's
for
very kind. Yeah, you can go to our website, nobodycaresbook.com. You can see everything about what we're doing and contact us. We'd love to hear your story. You can order a book from us and we'll mail it off autographed with a bookmark and some notes. And we want to get you in our community so we can hear about your journey and encourage you on the way. I'm always looking for places who will let me come speak, whether it's a keynote address or a retreat or a workshop on accountability. I feel like this is something God's put in my heart and a skill and a knowledge that I want to share. So if you're looking for somebody, yeah, let me know. I'd love to do that. And I'm all over LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. You can find Nobody Cares on there or reach out to me on LinkedIn myself directly.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much. This has been a delightful conversation. I'm so glad that you agreed to be a guest on my show.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
It was fun. It's fun.